Terrence Williams has been the boss of INDECOM since its inception 2 years ago. We sat down with him to find out a bit more about the organization still in its infancy. So, Mr. Williams, what interested you in the job to begin with?
Jamaica has a significant problem when it comes to the investigation of state agents who are alleged to have caused death or injury to civilians. A significant problem. Jamaica is unique with regards to the amount of fatalities caused in that manner, and Jamaica is also unique in the great degree of public disquiet about the nature of policing particularly, and the fairness of policing.
If you were to identify a major handicap of the organization, what would you say it is?
Well, it's newness, the fact that we're a new organization with new powers. Because if anyone told you, the police force, for example, would have to get used to a new organization that has powers similar to theirs. It's a new thing. I think that is a newness, which means the novelty of us and people getting used to what our powers are will take time for it to be accepted. That's the first problem. The second problem is we have institutionalized slowness in investigations, which people have got used to, which we reject. And we're saying, no, it's not right that people have to wait 2 years for an investigation to be complete. It's not right. People think that we're not serious. So we are trying to chip away at the things that cause the investigations to be so slow.
Would you say that you've had greater success than the BSI at getting convictions or making arrests?
BSI was around for for about 13 years, I believe they were around. In fact, they're still around, and we still do cooperate with them. I myself have not done a comparative year-on-year study as to how our numbers rate to the BSI numbers. And I don't want people to also measure success based upon charges either, because our aim is what happened here, what really happened here. And in some cases, no one should be charged. Indeed, the officer or the soldier should be commended for their action. So I don't want to measure success in that way. It is perhaps an easy way to look at the numbers in that regard, but it's not fair.
True, but resolution of cases then would be a better measure, a better yardstick.
Yes, certainly would be. And I must say right now, I am not happy with how we are resolving cases, which is the reason why we have now moved for this new 60-day target.
During the press event last week, the launch of the ballistics lab, you made a comparison between the number of state killings in Jamaica and the number of state killings in New York. But is that a fair comparison, considering that Jamaica's homicide rate is larger than New York's homicide rate to begin with?
The truth is, it is a challenge to find any country in the world which has as high a per capita rate of fatalities caused by the police and the army as Jamaica does. It is difficult. In 2001, the last per capita study I know of, done by Amnesty International, Jamaica was the #1 per capita deaths caused by police, soldier involvement with the public. Jamaica averages 200 a year. That's an average. It is not. There are some years which is really, really very bad, but 200 seems to be our bottom that we have not been able to go below. Now, I am not impractical. Many of these are justified shootings. And what it is for us as INDECOM to do is to do an investigation which we hope all parties will have confidence in, to say which ones were justified and which ones were not.
Since the Tivoli incursion in May 2010, the number of murders has fallen drastically. Are you saying that the number of killings by police officers has not fallen in a similar pattern?
The Tivoli year was a year of extremely high levels of fatalities caused by or coming from police-involved incidents. Extremely high year. It was about 300. So certainly it has fallen since then. But the point that I'm making is we're happy of course, to see both numbers fall. But the police-involved fatalities are my concern. And as regards those, the numbers have been high and consistently high for a very long period. If you're saying 200 a year, you're going to find some countries in a state of war where 200 people dying a year is unknown.
Recently, you've been calling for more powers for INDECOM, particularly as it relates to prosecutions. You want to be able to initiate prosecutions rather than going through the DPP and the police commissioner. Tell me about that.
In the current arrangement, what is required is that you do a case file, you send a case file to the DPP will rule on it, and then advise us, and then we then will have to tell the police commissioner what the DPP has ruled. The police commissioner looks at the file, and then the man will be arrested and charged by the police. It is a circuitous practice. It therefore requires the consent of the DPP and the agreement of the police commissioner or the police before somebody can be charged. We think that that is certainly an unusual arrangement and an unnecessary arrangement. It first causes delay because the DPP staff have their cases that they're doing. I'm sure that they are well burdened with those cases. They then have to look at the file in the free moments that they do get to look at it. We have noticed that in a good time, this might take a couple months. In a bad time, it takes many months for them to examine it. Of course, I'll admit, there are some times when they do look at it quite quickly, in a day or a couple of days. So you do get a variety of responses. Then it goes to the police, through the BSI, for them to determine to charge the man. If the police officer has someone to charge, he need not go to the DPP for permission. He can charge the man immediately and bring the matter before the court. Our organization is one where we have the legal advice institutionalized in our organization, which means that before we determine anything that somebody should be charged, it is legally examined by myself and other lawyers. So we think we're in a very good place to make that determination. And indeed, if we are wrong, the magistrate can refuse to have the charge brought, or Justice of the Peace can refuse to have the charge brought. If we are wrong, the DPP can intervene and end the charge, as they could do for a police charge. What has happened in Jamaica because of this method? That you have added slowness, a slowness to determine whether you should prosecute, to a slowness in the investigation. You have also created a situation where officers have absconded the territory whilst awaiting decision to charge. A couple of years ago, when we looked at the number, there were almost 30 charges, 30 officers who had fled. Indeed, I'll give you a figure that I recall. In the BSI years, more officers fled the country than were convicted. There's one other important reform that we have called for, which is, you know that if you are a licensed firearm holder and you lose your firearm, you have to go to the police station, you have to report it. And that report is evidence against you. Now, that means the police can build a case about you losing your firearm based upon the report you gave to the police. It is an exception to the so-called right to silence. We are asking that something similar be done for when state agents are using state power and an injury or death is caused. So if a police officer uses his weapon and shoots someone, he should be required not only to say, I fired my weapon at this street on this date, but he should also have it in law that that admission made by him is admissible against him at his trial. For this reason, in many cases that we do, there is a great difficulty in people identifying who was the soldier or policeman who shot at them or shot at the other person. And it's clear why. First of all, the policemen are not their friends, and they may not be from the community, or may not even be from the station in the community. Mm-hmm. Further, the police officers and the soldiers wear a uniform,
right,
which makes them all look very much similar, and also covers their face and other pertinent features. And so they will come on the scene, and the people will say, well, it is a policeman who shot me, and the description, well, it's a tall, dark policeman. You know, our policemen are fairly tall, so it's very hard to pick out who the policeman was. Now, when you do those cases, generally, you're going to have to depend on a colleague identifying his own colleague, and in many cases they say they don't see what they didn't see what their colleague did, or you're going to depend upon ballistics, which should go back to the problem of the delay. But ballistics, you're almost depending on good fortune, because sometimes you will not collect ballistic material, because the officers on the scene may take up the spent shells, civilians may take up the spent shells. Spent shells may be lost. The bullet may go through the body and not be recovered. The bullet might fragment and you not recover it. And in many cases, you are left with no good and cogent way to prove that this officer was the one who caused the death of this person. You just can't prove it. So the public will then, I think, will say, but how can that be? How is it that...
You solve any cases.
Yes. How is it that a soldier or a police officer was on a scene and the state can't prove that they were there? I'll tell you, in quite a few cases, there was this problem.
That particular reform has been sent to legislators for their consideration, so it will be up to Jamaica's parliament to decide what additional powers they want to give to INDECOM. But even as the organization is now, Commissioner Williams believes they've been and will continue to make a huge difference in the island's policing culture.